The last video we had knitted on the index finger. I went ahead and did the middle finger just to kind of see how it was, plus I was near the camera. Okay, we're now going to work the index finger. The index finger requires us to take 6 stitches off of our waste yarn, or in my case I'm using a stitch marker, from the palm side. And the 6 stitches that I still have on my DPN that was just holding my stitches, you might have it on waste yarn, from the top side of the mitten, okay? And then join them into the round, knitting 11 rounds. After you join the 6, you are going to also create a cast-on stitch between the fingers, between the middle finger and the ring finger, and between the ring finger and the pinky finger. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to, what I want to do too is I want my waist or my tail yarn to end up between the middle finger and the ring finger, so that I can sew up the hole that's going to create there. So the first thing I'm going to do is, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick these fingers inside. And you can do this as well, because when you're running around in circles with those little DPNs, they tend to catch on like just about everything. So that might make it a little bit easier for me to demonstrate or figure it out, and for you to knit as well. Okay, so now I'm going to create that index finger from here. Just, you see those little guys just there. All right. And in order to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 stitches off my palm side and 2 stitches off my top side. I'm going to use 3 DPNs all together to work this, because I used 4 with the stitches and then a 5th one working them last time, and that was just really, really bad. Okay, so I'm going to flip onto DPNs, 2 stitches from the palm and 2 stitches from the front, and then just let those guys go. Then I'm going to take another needle, and from the palm side again, I'm going to flip the other 4 stitches that I need from the palm side. And 4. And then just reconnect that, or drop your yarn or whatever you have going on there. And 4, use a starting and a slide that around. Okay. So I now have on my DPNs 12 stitches. Okay. Here's the first 4 of the palm, then 2 more on this needle. All right. Between this big gap right here is where we're going to create a cast-on stitch. Then we're going to knit the top, create another cast-on stitch, and then join this DPN to this DPN. Okay, the stitches. And obviously we're going to ignore what you have on your waist yarn in between. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to first join my yarn to these 2 stitches right here on this DPN, and that's going to be my first DPN. So however you like to mark your first row, I like using the end cap, the DPN protector or needle protector. I'm going to take a hardy length of tail for this. I'm going to use probably about 6 to 8 inches, I guess I have there. Insert the needle to knit into the first stitch, slide my yarn onto the bottom stitch, and pull it through. That's going to attach my yarn that I'm going to work with. And in this case, I'm going to knit with both my tail yarn and my working yarn on my second stitch, so that when I come back around, I'll know where I am. Okay, now I'm going to drop the tail yarn. Drop the tail yarn. And with the working yarn, create 1 cast on. In order to create a cast on, I'm going to hold the yarn like such, under and off. And that's demonstrated a little bit more in one of the other videos. I'm trying to keep this short and sweet while still trying to show everything. So I'm going to go into too much detail about what is already gone into. Okay, and then continuing on, that same DPN, and nice and tight. Pull that tight because there's a big gap there. Trying to hold that stitch that I just made on the right. keep going. You really want to start that first row off really tight. And when I did the other finger, I noticed that, I mean, I pulled it really, really tight, and there's still a big hole there. And at first I thought, oh gosh, I made it too tight and I couldn't get my finger in, but then I just kind of spread it apart a little bit, and it worked out just fine. I mean, spread it apart, you'll feel like one tight piece of yarn in there. Okay, I am now at the point where I'm going to be joining into the round. But before I do that, I'm going to create one more cast on stitch, because we're now between the pinky and the index finger, because that's, well, this would be like the outer part of the mitten, and then it's going to create a round and around for the pinky. Oh, it just makes sense, whatever, forget that part I just said. I know what I'm talking about. It might not be as obvious to you. Okay. So I just created one more cast on stitch, and then I'm going to pull all this mess together into the round. Nice and tight, really tight. I mean, like over-exaggerated tight, seriously. I don't think you can make it tight enough. And then knit, knit. And then now back to my very first stitch, because that's where I have my little plunger guy. And I'm going to put my plunger guy on my needle that starts me off. Okay. There's the first stitch. The second stitch is the one that I knitted with both my tail yarn and my working yarn together. So there's going to be 2 stitches on the needle. Just knit those 2 together. The next stitch is a cast on stitch. See how that looks a little different? And I'm sure you saw that when we did the Glitten opening for the thumb. So I'd like to pull it forward a little bit so I can get some room under there and knit it. Knit. And knit. I want to go around this thing at least one time. Oh, I'm not sure why I have extra needles in my hands. There's my tail yarn. You can tuck that inside if that gets in the way too. Gotta take the time right now. I want to get around to that other cast on. Just because, so you can see, just so you know, it wasn't really you that messed something up. It's going to be really, really loose. Watch this. If it's not, I'll be surprised. Oh, there's the other cast on. Hold on, let me get the stupid tail yarn out of the way. See that cast on stitch? This one right here. So it just, if anybody has any information as to how to make that cast on not spread out like that, please email me or make a comment or something. So just knit it as normal. And then we're back to, well, almost back to our very first DPN. Anyway, just keep going around. And like I said, you do 11 rows. And see, that's the cast on. So whatever. As far as I can tell, it's just unavoidable. But you know, just keep going around, and like when I make this next stitch, it'll actually look a little bit better there. But I'm going to pull that tight again, coming between the 2 DPNs. I can't overstress how much you should just pull that really tight on those changes when you change the DPNs. All right, that was 2 rounds. Just going to start off this. I should have pulled this through because that tail yarn looks like something's going on there, and it's not. It's now in the circle, and I'm going to keep knitting 11 rounds. I have 2 done now, and then I'll come back and show you how to do the bind off the top, which you should already be familiar with, but just the same.